The people have spoken. You know, everyone thinks they know about the inner workings of these clip fans. They think they know, but do they really know the good, the bad, the ugly, and even the unnamed? Let the showdown begin. Before we get started, we just want to let you know we're here to present the facts on all of these popular clip fans that are roughly in the $50 MSRP range. Be sure to watch till the end. We're going to show you some amazing revamps we saw on the acinfinity Cloudray S6 Gen 2, and be sure to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Getting into the history of clip fans, here's where it kind of started, where we saw these showing up 5-10 years ago. This is kind of everything we saw, and what you're going to see in this and why we saw so many problems with this design. This is your what we call the cheap China design. This is something you would get at a Walmart. What it has in it is a AC voltage motor. There's problem number one. When you put an AC voltage motor and you tend on using it for continuous use, the heat becomes too much. And then just looking over at how we engage the oscillate function, that's another issue. You do a pop drop with the lock, pop and lock with this unit, pulling it in and out, and all that does on the same rated motor that's running the fan is it just puts more weight, more wear on an AC motor. And what that's going to do is just burn your motor out. These things are, I mean, we've already made so many of these things over the years when this was the only option to offer and people had no other choices. It's just the worst design that, you know, we've seen. I mean, but again, in time, things get better, and that's why we're doing this video. We're showing you this video because we want to show you the differences and the evolution of where clip fans started and where they are now. And that's when we're going to lead right over to the Cloudray S6 Gen 1. So diving right into the acinfinity Cloudray S6 Gen 1, what we're looking at here is a redesign. This thing came out roughly 2 years ago, and when we received our first unit in the mail, we realized this is something a little more special than what we saw everything beforehand being a traditional clip fan. They redid the clip, but the most important thing we noticed was the DC motor that's controlling independent oscillate function and an independent DC motor built right into the cage that's driving the fan. So this combination was a huge step in the evolution of a Grow Tent clip fan. Once they started using DC motors, you eliminate heat buildup, you have a more efficient fan, it runs quieter, it runs smoother. What could possibly go wrong? We have a control board right here built into the back housing assembly, and the one thing that acinfinity missed on this, the biggest reported thing was, why is my fan clicking? So that's the biggest question, and everybody has an assumption, oh, it's this, it's that. Well, you know, we knew it was the gearbox, but the question was it the gears going bad, or was it something deeper? So what we looked at when we actually opened up an oscillation motor, you can see this one, this was a clicking unit. And by looking at it, you can tell it was overheating. You can see the dark brown spots. You can tell that these gears were being worked so hard by this motor that they were binding up. They were overworked. Binding gears causes a clicking sound. But the clicking sound was actually being created by the control board that the DC motor is plugged into. And the job of that control board is to continuously reverse the voltage back and forth based on a time function. Okay, so all it's really doing to that motor is it's going plus voltage, reverse voltage to minus, and all that this motor is doing is going back and forth on a time sequence. The problem with this design though over time is if the head of this fan gets overworked, or that head is going into the side of a tent wall, or you bump into it, the control board itself does not know that now the calibration is essentially off on this motor. If this motor got pushed in one direction, one click too far, the board doesn't know. So it continues to do its standard timing with its voltage sequence and doesn't change it. So what ends up happening is the gears are trying to push 1 to 2 clicks further in a direction, continuously overworking it day over day. And that's why we have that clicking sound that can eventually just lead to failure. I mean, all in all, a lot of these, they've worked really good where you see the clicking sound and they just keep working. But to a lot of other customers, it annoys them. They feel that it's going to fail. And they just, you know, the overwhelming response with that flaw led to more innovation, which we're going to get to at the end of this video. But next, we're going to bust over to the VIVOSUN, because I've heard a lot of comments about acinfinity and VIVOSUN and this and that, and we're going to show you, are they really the same? So we got the VIVOSUN AEROWAVE E6 model. I guess this is VIVOSUN's newest drop. We had to order this in just to be able to take it apart and kind of compare it, because it is one fan that we hear mentioned from time to time. And here we go. Let's just dive right into it on what we see. We've had this for less than 24 hours. We actually took some time to look up a lot of the reviews being written about this fan. And the most common thing we saw is that it dies after a few months. That's like the biggest complaint, is it just stops working. So I guess we're going to take a closer look at what the design is on the VIVOSUN and what we're seeing and what we may see as the problem on why this one stops working. We think we have some pretty good ideas though. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with when we took this out of the box. First of all, it was packaged like crap. It didn't have any styrofoam. It was just like a cardboard insert with a bunch of shit like shaking around in the box. So strike one. But when we did take it out, I noticed VIVOSUN took a kind of like a cheap little printer accessory power cord, power adapter, versus building the power source right into the back of the plate like acinfinity over here. So they built their power supply right into the back on the original Cloudray S6. And if you notice, the power cord itself is probably 3 times thicker than the VIVOSUN. So the one thing you got to say to yourself is, in grow applications, when I see thin cables like this, and I've been dealing in electronics a long time, when you have kinks and bends and constant reworking of cables, you run the risk of the cables, the wires on the inside essentially just fraying off. If only one of those wires just frays off and is broken inside, no power is going to run through the line, stops working. It could also be the fact that when I picked up this little power supply, it weighs the weight of maybe a Golden Eagle dollar coin. It is weightless. So there's not much components in here as far as, like, when I lift up an electronic component, I like to feel a little weight to know there's some quality behind it. I'm not feeling that on this right here. And when I started to look at the actual fan when we have it turned on, we want to show you, of course, the oscillating assembly, because that's a big thing with the Cloudray S6, is the clicky issue. So with the original S6, we have the clicky. With the VIVOSUN AEROWAVE E6, we have the no worky. So which one's better? I don't know. But what we're seeing also, when you look at the upper area right in here, you'll notice that there's a big white cable. That's the, you know, the basically the protective outer, whatever you call it, cable housing that's going to protect all the smaller cables coming up through the neck, through the power supply cord. But what we noticed is that's a tight squeeze. If you look at that white cable, it is rotating back and forth on not only the motor itself, but the plastic housing that's responsible for the oscillate function. So the question you got to ask yourself is this going to overwork the motor? It is using DC motors, but what if something gets stuck? What if that grease starts to harden and get thicker over time to where it just creates a pressure point, a friction point that's going to cut off those wires? So we're seeing definitely why this thing could possibly stop working. I'm not really bashing it in any sense. I'm just kind of pointing out what we're seeing and kind of how we feel about it. So everyone can make up their own minds on what they think of these designs, and share your thoughts with us, because this is fun to us. And lastly, the one thing I do want to mention at the end of this video, we're going to go over the weights of all of these fans, what they physically weigh, because again, sometimes a heavier fan is a better fan. So lastly, but not least, we're going to finally go over to our Gen 2 Cloudray S6, and we're going to get to these revamped designs that we find are just above all the rest. So let's move on over there and get started. Okay, so here we are, the Gen 2 Cloudray S6 by acinfinity. We took it apart. This is what you guys wanted to see. John, come in here. Give him the money shot. Take a look. It's completely different than every other fan we went through beforehand in this video, and now we're going to kind of break down the latest. So what we see now is acinfinity now took the power board that supplies all the power to the components and mounted it up top versus on the back plate. I did notice, also wanted to point this out, much higher quality cables they're using versus other brands. These are thicker, better quality cables that'll probably have much less chance of fray if there was any movement. I love that. Moving downward, the next big thing that we see, one of the biggest improvements that you guys all want to know about, is the DC motor. This thing is about 3 times the size of the original S6. It's monstrous, like monstrous. There is no comparison. When I looked at any other fans, this thing is huge. So when we look at the size of this new geared DC motor that they put in, they kind of took this problem serious at acinfinity with the click issue. As we move down, it gets even better, because when we start to look at below the DC motor, now we're seeing a metal mount plate resting on top of a ball bearing built right into the neck assembly. What this is going to do, guys, for grow applications, this little design is going to completely alleviate any weight issues, any overbearing loads. It is going to mitigate any stress points that can be created by extra wear. They perfected this little design right in here. I'm telling you, this is what our industry needed. It's the oscillation design that we've been waiting for, but it does get even better. When you look a little bit further, they've got the geared DC motor, monster motor, but then they've also ran it directly into an external geared assembly on the neck itself. So you've got a very geared down, powerful, smooth, quiet fan. I mean, I'm really impressed. I don't see designs and redesigns that are as good as this one, but whoever re-engineered this, I would personally like to shake their hand. Of course, in an unbiased fashion.
Afternoon, my afternoon. Come on, bring it in there. Talk that. I'm in there, dog. I'm in there, dog. I'm in there, dog. You talking in there? But you talk, dog. But you talk, dog. You talking? I'm in there. You come in there. I'm in there. All right.
But I do love what I'm seeing here. So as we go a little bit further down, I'm going to save my last feature. Some of y'all may have already seen it who are a little bit more techie. I'm going to save it for last because it's my favorite one to kind of talk about. I'm going to skip to this other thing right here where we notice, yeah, they removed the power cord off the back. So when it does oscillate, we don't have that weight issue. They mounted it here on a tight gasket seal, big thick power cord. Nice. It's exactly where they should put it. But last but not least, we talked about how the clicking sound on the original Cloudray S6 occurred, and it was because all they used the control board for. And there's another one built into here. We really don't need to show it to you because it just controls button function. But what we want to talk about is the control interface board that was reversing the power on the original is why it overworked the motors. But when we look here, the last function, and when I saw this built in with this little board added here with these cables running off, you look right here. Do you guys notice what those are? For some of you in the industry that aren't familiar with these little guys in there, those are laser sensors. So those laser sensors were dropped in there to feed back to the control board to let it know its calibration set point at 0. So if one of you guys you accidentally bump into the fan when you're working in a tent, or you make contact, or it makes contact, this thing now knows how to recalibrate itself back to the 0 set point, perfectly controlling oscillating function. So this is definitely something that, like, when we saw this rework, I hope you guys appreciate this as much as we do. We're really excited to see this fan drop about mid-February, and we're definitely going to be bringing this into my store to offer to our customers in an unbiased fashion, of course. But the thing we like is we like quality. And we're going to hit real quick just on the weights of all these fans so you guys have those details as well. And what do we got for weights? So coming in at the lightest weight when we're talking about all our DC motor clip fans, the VIVOSUN weighed in at a raw weight, 1 pound and 7 ounces of weight. The Gen 1 S6 Cloudray, 1 pound 10 ounces. So it's 3 ounces heavier, a little bit heavier, which means they put a little bit more motor, a little bit more metal in, not much else. But the Gen 2, when I first touched this thing, I noticed it was way heavier. It's 2 pounds 3 ounces. So you do the math. You start to look at all the additional things that acinfinity took seriously about this redesign to say, we don't want our customers to have this problem. We want to make a better fan. Well, Yahtzee. Thanks for watching till the end, guys. We really did have a blast taking these fans apart and showing you all the guts. It was our pleasure. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button to show your support to GardenSupplyGuys.com. Make sure to hit the bell notification. You'll get those updates on our latest video drops. Thanks for watching.